The Cayman GT4 Nucleus theory. If you're a watcher or listener of this car pod, you may be familiar with the theory that Doug cooked up a little while ago.
The Cayman GT4 is the sports car.
Yeah.
And it is the nucleus that for which all sports cars are. And if you've made any enthusiast automotive decision that isn't a Cayman GT4, you have strayed from the automotive sports car nucleus. If, for example, like my Carrera GT, Cayman GT4 is the nucleus, Carrera GT is out over here, and the type of person who does that has an ego and wants a hypercar. They should just have a Cayman GT4. The presupposition here is that all sports car drivers should have a Cayman GT4. Right. But anything you choose outside that realm says something about you that you have elected not to get a Cayman GT4. You have looked at the best and you have made it. It's not necessarily that you've chosen a worse car. It's just that, like, you want an old car or you want a
cheaper car.
You want a cheaper car, but you know at your heart that the nucleus,
the best option,
is the Cayman GT4.
When I first heard this theory, there was a car that immediately came to mind to challenge it. It's a car that's all about lightweight, balance, and the joy of driving. That's right, it's the Mazda MX-5 Miata, and in today's video, I am going to be defending the thesis that the Miata deserves to be at least a second nucleus in Doug's theory. Now, some of you will recognize this Miata, and that's because both Doug and I have filmed with it before because it is such a great reference point. This is a 1990 NA Miata, a really early build, and it is base, meaning that it has cloth seats, a manual transmission, steel wheels, and no air conditioning. It didn't even have a radio. That was added in period though. And this car is virtually unmodified. It is so pure, and its odometer touts just 5,300 original miles. This is as fresh an NA Miata as you're ever going to find. And of course, it's live right now on Cars and Bids through Ken and R with no reserve. I adore this car though, and when it came back through and was submitted to me, I leapt at the opportunity to film with it because I really love it, and I think it's the perfect car to defend the Miata's honor. Reason number one that I feel the Miata deserves its own nucleus is that it's all about joy. This car is about the joy of driving. Now, the Cayman GT4 is a brilliant car, but it's not exactly what you call humor-filled. It's great to drive, but it's not exactly fun. It's very focused, and you can take it very seriously, and that kind of loses the purity of joy. Sports cars are completely superfluous. We don't need them in our lives. They're just a fun way to get around. The Miata is so pure in that sense, and I actually think more pure in that regard than the Cayman GT4, and that is the first reason why I think it deserves its own nucleus. The second reason I feel the Miata deserves its own nucleus is focus. There is nothing in this car, especially the NA, that does not need to be here. There's nothing superfluous. The Porsche, being a Porsche, means that they are optioned by Porsche people who obsess over things that just don't matter. Deviated stitching. Oh, I have leather on the underside of my sun visor. Shut up, nobody cares. The whole point of that car is about driving, but the people who own them tend to ruin that fact. The Miata is also all about driving, but there's no snobbery associated anywhere with this car. And that's why I think it's just so pure and focused. And that applies to its design, that applies to the interior, that applies to the engineering. It's just very focused on the absolute essentials of having fun in a car. The third reason why I feel the Miata deserves its own nucleus is that it is accessible. The Cayman GT4 is an expensive car. It is a six-figure car, so it should be excellent. The NA Miata, though, was always designed to be accessible and affordable for people who wanted a fun sports car. When this car came out back in 1990, its base MSRP was $13,800, meaning that pretty much anybody with some spare cash lying around could get into one of these. And that remains true today. The Mazda MX-5 is still a very accessible car. Designing a car to be accessible within a budget is a lot more challenging than designing a car to be expensive. Now, the Cayman GT4 is far from the most expensive Porsche you can buy, but it's still a six-figure car, and for the overwhelming majority of people, that is an incredible amount of money. However, the Miata has always remained accessible, and that is something that Mazda deserves a lot of credit for because, well, it's really difficult. And I think that that makes this car even more pure and worthy of having its own nucleus. The fourth reason why I feel this car deserves its own nucleus is that it is mechanically balanced. Now, admittedly, You're not buying a Miata of any generation for the amount of power that it makes, but relative to the rest of the car, it's perfectly in harmony with itself. Now, this car is powered by a 1.6 liter inline four cylinder, and it makes about 115 horsepower. Crazy low numbers by the standards of today. However, this car also weighs right around 2,100 pounds because it is the base version of the NA Miata, and the hardtop is off right now. That means that despite this car's relatively low power, it's not as slow as you might think. I'm not pretending it's rapid, but given what the rest of the car is all about, it's actually surprisingly decent. Now, of course, the engine really isn't the star of this show. The star is its low curb weight and how this car handles. Mazda saved weight wherever they could. They added an aluminum hood, and they just stripped stuff out as much as they could, remove what did not need to be there. In fact, on suspension components, they even drilled holes in them, again, to just reduce weight wherever they could. On the topic of the suspension, this car has double wishbone suspension at all 4 points, which is really impressive. That wasn't even around the GT3 until the 992 came out. Now, of course, again, this car had to be made to a budget, so they're made out of steel as opposed to aluminum, which is what Mazda originally wanted to do. Regardless, it's not like this car, despite looking very bubbly and cute, is not a serious driving car. Mazda set this up to be something very focused to drive. Now, of course, the Cayman GT4 is set up that way as well. And that car too strikes a really excellent balance. But again, given the price difference between the two, you would expect that. It is the right judgment of power in both cars and how they're set up that make them excellent. And that's why, I'm gonna say it again, both are worthy of having their own Nucleus. And the fifth reason this car deserves its own Nucleus is how well it drives. Now, all Miata generations are brilliant driver's cars. Some of them are revered more than others. The NA certainly falls into the category that is beloved by pretty much everybody. And that's just due to its stark simplicity and its just purity. And everything in this car is, almost everything, is judged to perfection. I'm gonna start by talking about the shifter. Oh, what a nice notchy shifter. It's super short and it's just right. Everybody talks about how Honda does such a great job with their shifters. Well, Mazda does too. And this one, it's such a pleasure to use. Admittedly, when you start out, it's a little colder, it's more notchy, but you can just tell, again, like the focus on this car was having fun. So they gave it a great manual transmission and they really knocked it out of the park. That being said, this car was also offered as an automatic, even early on in its life, just to make sure that lots of people could still enjoy it. But the manual obviously is what you want, especially these days. And luckily, substantial number, the overwhelming majority, I would say, were built with a manual transmission. So let's talk about the engine a little bit while we're on the topic of driveline. You know, this engine is not rapid, but that said, you can use all of it all the time. And right there, like, I just got to the speed limit in essence. And I'll be honest, it doesn't feel that slow. It's by no means a GT4, but it's you get to use 100% of the power. It's all there, and you really have to wring this four-cylinder engine, and that's the joy of it. And it still feels it's nice. It's really fun. And of course, like I'll say, it doesn't have lots of torque, but you can see there, like, it has some torque. It's not as anemic as the numbers kind of make you think. The other things that are judged to perfection, the clutch in this car, super easy to use, very linear, just great input. One thing that is not perfect in this car is the steering. This car hails from 1989 is when it was built for the 1990 model year, and there's definitely some play in the steering. It's got a huge diameter steering wheel, no power assist, but it's definitely vague on center. That's just kind of how cars of this time were. It's a very 90s thing, and it's unfortunately present here in the NA Miata. So that's one thing I would say against it. Another negative of this car is the scuttle shake. My goodness. Driving this car on the highway, it vibrates like a tuning fork. Again, like, this car is lightweight, so they didn't want to add all that much structural, strengthening where it needed to make this car super stiff, because it would have cost them in terms of performance. However, the car was designed to be a convertible from the onset. That said, you can visually see the windshield move separate from the body of the car. But the quality of the inputs into everything in this car, you know, the brakes are nice and progressive, and of course you're only hauling down 2,100-ish pounds. So realistically, you know, you don't need a whole heck of a lot of stopping force with this car. And so the brakes are more than up to the task. But then comes what this car is all about, and that is suspension. And this car, once you start building a little bit of speed and you huck it in, it's surprisingly capable. Given its age, you wouldn't necessarily expect that from a car from the late 80s, but I mean, you can really toss it in and it just takes it. It's just very compliant, and that's really impressive. I mean, this car is bone stock, like really outside of the head unit, not a modification to the thing. And it's just stunning that when you remove weight from the equation, how well the car drives. Oh, it's so happy. It just makes you smile. You don't even have to be going that fast. But look at that. It just eats up corners. That's so crazy. I mean, it really is a momentum car for sure. But compared to the GT4, like, I think the reason I want I'm not saying the GT4 is a bad car at all. I think I agree with Doug. I think the GT4, probably the best sports car of my lifetime. The 981 GT4 in particular, the 718 is great too, but those GT4s, they're just awesome. But I recognize that $100,000 is a lot of money. And when you really think about the purest sports cars, what are the best sports cars and what makes them so good, it's their balance of everything. The GT4 is great because it has very good power, a capable chassis. It's just a wonderful car to drive. And everything is in harmony with itself. And the same thing can be said and should be said about the Miata. Now, I've always felt they're a little down on power. As you can hear, I'm kind of waiting. But the thing is, like, when I think about the balance of this car and the balance of the GT4, you know, there's something to it. And the GT4 is modern day car fast. So using that car aggressively on the street, you're gonna get into trouble. That car is just so quick. It makes driving so easy. But this car and a lot of Miatas, you can use 100% in this car's case for sure, but 90% in other car cases, like on the road, have fun and just enjoy the driving experience. There is a reason. Everybody says Miata, M-I-A-T-A. Miata is always the answer, and it's easy to see why. You're thinking about what driving enthusiasts want to please the majority of us. The Miata does a great job at that. Yep, the Cayman GT4 is a better car, but it should be. It's a lot more expensive. And there you have it, the NA MX-5. I really love this car. If I weren't so gung-ho on getting a Viper, I wouldn't even bring this car to auction. I would just take it home. I love it that much. It is just truly a joyful little object, and it really deserves to be the second Nucleus in Doug's theory. And if you too love the NA Miata and you're looking for one, well, you can give this really lovely example a home on Cars and Bids. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll talk to you very soon. Goodbye.
Is it not the Miata?
Interesting point. However, I would say fine. I'll do a 2 price point Nucleus. At this price point, it's the Cayman GT4. At the lower price point, it's the ND3 specifically.
Two.
And that's it.